Melanie Timm is user experience designer with 12 years of experience building applications for higher education, energy, and social networking industries. She excels at using user research, interaction design, and design thinking to turn user insights into actionable business opportunities. Melanie has built award-winning web applications from the ground up, tied together experiences across products and digital ecosystems, revamped legacy applications for modern users, and launched mobile apps to help deliver existing experiences to a new audience. She is also a leader and an educator who has helped build and improve the UX process at startups and international corporations. For the past 6 years, Melanie has worked as a senior user experience designer at SLB in Houston, and I will drop her LinkedIn in the chat for you to see. Melanie, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us at this HUXPA event after a little bit of a hiatus. It's great to see everybody and some new faces, some old faces. Everybody, if you'd like, because this is a professional development chat, feel free to drop your own LinkedIn information in the chat in case you want to get to know some folks, you want to make some connections. I know that my company, SLB, is currently looking for some user experience folks in a lot of different positions, specifically in generative research and design ops. And if anybody wants to come off mic real quick and put their pitch out there, if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can reach out on my LinkedIn or go to careers.slb.com to find more. Any other job posters out there who want to come off and say anything?
Hi, I'm Rodney Eccles. I don't have a job to post, but I do want to say that partnered up with a colleague, and she worked for I think 18 years at Nielsen Norman, and she over the pandemic was doing some really great work with landing jobs in UX, and so she and I send her young designers or people who are looking for resume reviews. And she helps them. And then if anybody needs mentoring in UX, I kind of help with in that area. So I'm going to include my my LinkedIn in the chat. But if anyone's looking for like a resume review, like I said, she worked for 18 years at Nielsen Norman, so she still works in product design now, so she can provide feedback on resume and portfolio. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Rodney. Anyone else? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're going to get started. If you have anything else to post, feel free to throw in the chat and people will check it out. So I believe we can see the presentation. All right. So today's talk this evening, I'd like to talk to you guys about making time for professional development and why it's so important to our ongoing professional development needs. They went through my bio a little bit, but as they said, I've been working for the last 6 years at Schlumberger. I've got about 12 years of experience in the industry across energy, social networking, as well as higher education. And some of the things that kind of led me to a professional development journey and why I think I can kind of give some thoughts on the topic. I graduated out of Boston University in 2008 into the financial crisis. So I was going up for jobs in New York in advertising against folks who had 20 years of experience. The industry kind of cratered. We were having a really hard time finding jobs. So one of the things that I noticed and kind of started upskilling myself in was that I had taken some interactive web design classes during school. And one of the things that I had that those folks who had been in the industry for 20 years did not was some of those interactive design skills. So I parlayed that over a couple of positions into eventually a position in UX. And ever since then, every UX role I've taken has come with the knowledge that I was going to be joining a organization where I would be building a UX practice and growing the UX competency at that organization. So out of necessity, a lot of my personal development has been self-driven And I know firsthand that sharing knowledge and building community has been integral to driving the UX maturity forward in those organizations so that I could pursue the things that I was most interested in. So during this talk today, I'm probably going to use personal and professional development a little interchangeably. I put it as development in the chat. Professional development refers to the skills you learn to advance your career in the lexicon. Personal development generally refers to skills that you're learning to improve your life. I believe that developing skills under both of those umbrellas is going to make you a more effective colleague and employee. So for the chat today, I'm just going to use the term development. How are you improving your skills and how you show up at your job to be a decent human being and to do good work as development? So why is development important? If you join the workforce in the US at age 25 and you work to the retirement age of 40 and you get 2 years off or 2 weeks off each year for vacation, you are going to work 80,000 hours of your life. That is a big number and a lot of time to be spending working. If you, like me, started in the workforce much earlier than 25, you're doing more than 80,000 hours of work. The perfect job probably doesn't exist, but if you're going to spend that much time and energy putting effort into something, wouldn't it be nice if it at least meets some of the criteria of the things that motivate you? So I want you to think, when we're thinking about professional development, as where is all of your hard work going and who is it serving? So as I go through these questions, I want you to think not just what, but also why. So what is the motivation you have to do your work in UX, to do your work in the industry that you're doing it in? What do you want to do more of or less of in your current role, in your next role, before you retire? What skills do you want to develop? What skills do your colleagues or your boss want you to develop? And what are the facets of the current industry you're in, the role you have in the organization that you're working for? What parts of that make it harder, make it easier, make it more engaging, and make it more enjoyable? So if you think about the what of each of those, also think about the why. What is your motivation to work? And why is that your motivation? Dig a little bit deeper into understanding how you're making your decisions, and that will help you inform the roles and opportunities to pursue as you continue your career. So why is development important? I think it's important because it increases your awareness of what's possible. It keeps things interesting when projects start to get slow or you're in a little bit of a rut. It's going to give you something to fall back on and keep you engaged in learning about UX. It's going to give you an opportunity to build skills inside and outside of your current core workload. It's going to give you bargaining power for your next promotion or your next role change. It's going to help educate and upskill those around you. It's going to make you a more effective and efficient colleague, team member, and subordinate. And as we all are following along in the news, there's a lot of things that will happen that you have very little control over. I have seen over the years many, many good people lose jobs or have demotions that had nothing to do with you. So when those things happen, when pandemics hit and everything goes to chaos, having some professional development skills in your back pocket will give you more options. So one thing I want to point out here is something that people always say is, am I living to work or am I working to live? And I think it's maybe a different approach to think about things. Most of us have to work, unfortunately. We're not independently wealthy and we can just live off of our trust funds. A lot of us still have to work, but it doesn't always have to be an upward climb. If you have a job that motivates you, meets your needs, and will continue to do so in the long term, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's the goal, right? However, if you are in a role today that you think there's room for improvement in one of these areas, taking time to develop some skills that could lead to improvements in the areas that matter to you most may be a worthy use of your time and resources. So one of the largest challenges when we think about development in UX is that this industry, this discipline is still burgeoning in a lot of different organizations. And the lack of career ladders at most places can make things challenging. Back in 2017, Nielsen Norman Group talked to 360 UX professionals about what were their biggest challenges in doing good work at that time. And the results of that study, they noted as UX management challenge, leadership and focus on research. UX management, leadership, and focus on research as being the biggest challenge in UX. So there are, compared to other industries, some missing rungs on our career ladder. In a lot of organizations, especially low maturity UX organizations, there is going to be a lack of representation in the hierarchy of UX roles. So we can see here in the chart that only 3% of companies, maybe 10% total, have either a CEO president, a chief UX officer, or a UX vice president. UX director and manager, you see a few more, but 23% of the people who responded to the survey said they didn't even know what the highest level of UX was. So visibility about what even the career ladder might look like for these folks was a little bit hard to understand. We also see that UX rarely reports to a UX team. A large majority of the professionals in this study said they did not work for a UX team and reported to a broader range of non-UX functions. I personally have never had a dedicated UX team that I was part of. We had maybe a matrix where I had a normal reporting line, but UX was kind of more of a conglomeration of folks who wanted to move together versus like a formal team. And that can also make it really challenging when we're talking about development opportunities within these organizations. But in all things, we can also look at this and see this as a potential opportunity. Because there's no fixed path, having the option to develop your own path gives you more flexibility, but it can also take a little bit more work. If there's not systems in place, you and your colleagues can start to build one that meets the needs of you, those colleagues, and the wider organization. All I'll say is that, like most good things, this can take time to actually see happen, and it takes a lot of effort and energy for the people involved. So if I'm talking about making time for professional development, personal development, where should you start? I think one of the most important things when we're thinking about growing and building a practice in a career over the lifetime of a career, it's really important to start changing the way we think about development. And in that, I'd like to cite the work of Carol Dweck and her thoughts on the growth mindset. Her idea around fixed mindset and growth mindset had that there's a spectrum of different ways of looking at the world. Folks with a fixed mindset have a conviction in the supremacy of their innate abilities, often neglecting the impact of effort and perseverance. She found that students who believed that they could continue to work harder and over time build skills, those who had a growth mindset were more likely to embrace learning opportunities and see learning as a process and something that is a challenge worth taking on. Folks in a fixed mindset tend to avoid new challenges, preferring to remain within the confines of their comfort zone. Folks with a growth mindset recognize the power of learning and continuing to build on those skills, to build new connections, to expand those skills. And we also notice that folks with a fixed mindset engage in negative self-talk and react defensively to negative feedback rather than using it as opportunity of growth. They see it as a personal attack against their innate skills. Folks with a growth mindset engage in constructive information seeking and constructive criticism, and view these as opportunities for improvement. So if you take nothing away from this talk today, thinking about learning differently, learning over time, how you can build constructively over time a sustainable practice of evolving your skills, that is the main thing I would love for you to take away from today. So consider the growth mindset. She has a great TED Talk as well as a book on the topic. Highly recommend. So when we're thinking about lifelong learning with a growth mindset, you have a few more options. You can start to pick a pace that makes sense for the season of life you're in. Maybe there's different things that are pulling your attention and you need to decrease your current development. That's okay. There's time for it later. It's not going to be a rush that you have to do everything right now today. You've got time and you've got space to explore the things that are interesting to you. You can revisit your development goals as life progresses. You can decide where it makes more sense to put in effort and time. Failures and missteps are stops on the path. They're not the final destination. Just because you run into something that's hard, with a growth mindset, you'll see that as an opportunity to learn something new and continue on the path rather than getting stuck in, I can't do it, I don't have the ability, I'm just going to stop now. So if you think about a growth mindset, how does this change the way that you've been thinking? Lots of us are coming from schools where, you know, you had 4 years and you had 4 years to accomplish one thing, and it was a set fixed amount of time, and you only had those 4 years. If you don't have a time box about how your education can progress, what does learning look like to you? How does that change your outlook about what you're choosing to pursue now and what you might decide to pursue in the future? I also think it gives us an opportunity to think about what can we deprioritize? What do we not need to learn right now? If you're really early in your career, maybe learning how to be a director of UX isn't the top priority right now. Maybe you can focus your efforts other places, because over time, there's going to be opportunity to get there. And what could you pursue now that was close to you before because you had perceptions about your innate abilities being fixed versus the idea that over time you could continue to grow? So for a lot of people, storyboards are super intimidating, right? They're like, I can't draw, I can't do this. Do you think you'd get better at drawing storyboards if you did 10? What about 20, 50? Over the course of your jobs in UX, how many storyboards could you draw? How could you get better at drawing and getting your ideas across in a medium that maybe wasn't something that you personally thought you could do before this? I also think something to consider when we're thinking about development, growth, areas that we want to pursue, there's also a spectrum of knowing things. At one end, we've got ignorance, a lack of knowledge or information, not ignorance as a negative, just a fact. This is something you've never been exposed to, you've never learned about it. For me, an example of that might be the life cycle of scallops. One of my favorite podcasts is going to be doing an episode on scallops next week. So tomorrow I'll probably move from ignorance to a bit of awareness, a knowledge of the perception or a situation or fact that I didn't know. But today, nothing, no idea about scallops. This is an area that I would consider ignorance. Awareness of something, I have an awareness of ChatGPT. People keep talking to me about it. I have read a few articles. I can talk about it for probably 2 to 3 minutes. Do not press me to go further. I am aware of a topic. I will continue to bring that information into my space as it comes to me, but maybe it's not something that I personally need to dig into right now. It's not an area that I need to spend and focus my time. Familiarity, a close acquaintance with some knowledge or something. So something that I'm more familiar with is chat bots. I spent some time about a year ago working on a project about chatbots. I could probably talk to you about the algorithm that we engaged with. I could talk to you about some of the challenges we faced in the user experience of interacting with that chatbot, some of the limitations of the machine learning. But the truth is, once that project stopped, so did my interest in the topic, and I've kind of spent my time on other things. So there are going to be things that maybe you only need an awareness or familiarity of to do your job, and that's okay. Then there's going to be things like that you're looking into for active study, things that you have a detailed investigation and analysis of a subject matter or situation. So one of the areas that I'm currently actively studying is how to optimize teamwork and collaboration in hybrid and remote teams. Over the last 3 years, I've been spending a lot of time and energy investigating this topic, practicing this topic, trying new and varied ways, new tools, trying to bring other people in and build new opportunities for us to explore how to make this better. This is an area I'm actively studying in. I'm not an expert. I'm further along than familiarity. And I see this as an area that is going to continue to be part of my work. So I'm going to continue to spend time and energy learning about how to do it best. And there at the end, we've got expertise. So this is having a very strong knowledge and competency in a particular field, both broad and deep knowledge about that topic. Now, one of the important things to realize here is that this spectrum of knowledge is not an even path. If we look down here at the bottom, ignorance and awareness are quite close. Familiarity takes a bit of time. Active study can take a very long time. And the more we learn about a topic, the more we start to understand how much we don't know and how much about that topic is unknown. So I would say active study and expertise, there is a wide gap there. Some topics you will never become an expert in. I would say generally for most people, you're only going to have a couple of things that you really get super deep, broad knowledge of. So picking the things and understanding which areas of your information need to be in each bucket can really help you narrow down the areas that you put your energy and effort into. So another thing to think about is that you are not just doing UX at your job. There are other areas that you can spend your time and energy developing and still continue to be better at work and being a better person showing up at that job. So you can spend your energy and time learning more about UX. You could spend it doing investigation into the domain or the business that you work in. You could spend your time evolving in mentoring and coaching. How are you helping people around you understand the skills that you know and helping them grow their own skills? You could spend your energy and time in teamwork and collaboration. How are you showing up as a member of a group of people attempting to do something? Are you doing it in a way where you can be trusted and relied on in those things? Are you easy to collaborate with? Are you fun to collaborate with? Do people want to work with you? These are also skills that can be learned and evolved over time. Management and leadership. On the career ladder, there are going to be people who have roles that are leadership roles or management roles. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but those are not always mutually exclusive. And just because you don't have that role doesn't mean you're not doing management and leadership as part of your job. So sometimes it's going to be useful for you to dig into those skills as well. Again, personal development, I think, makes you a better employee. So having information about your own self-awareness, how are you showing up in the world? And emotional intelligence, how are you showing up? And how does that impact the other people around you? These are also skills that are very, very important to develop. As UX, we collaborate, we work in teams, we do very little on our own. So skills that you can develop around working with other people are going to be very valuable. And then think about, where are you putting in energy and development of your relationships and your skills of influence? These are topics that I'm currently starting to understand, evolve, explore with some of my colleagues. And it's definitely an area that I don't have a ton of expertise in, but I'm very interested to see how do you build up those areas of expertise. So another thing that we think about when we're talking about moving up the career ladder is, what does it mean to be a junior to senior UX? And a lot of organizations that aren't as mature, maybe you've only got one UX person doing UX, but maybe the next level of maturity, now you've got one senior person who's just hired a couple junior people. So what does it take to move from junior to senior UX? In my experience, it takes exposure, being able to see how UX is, just being exposed to it out in the world. We can learn a lot from textbooks, but you will learn a lot more seeing it and all of the different facets of that work out in the world and having experience with many different ways of doing it. Practice, being able to do something more than once, being able to do something and fail, being able to do something, try something new and seeing it succeed. Practice is something, and exposure of those different activities is very important when we're thinking about moving from a junior to a senior level. Because you have exposure and practice, you will start to understand context. How does the work that you're doing fit into the wider picture of how UX fits into business, how the information that you're learning fits into the processes and the projects and the product. Okay. Okay. So as I was saying, when we're thinking about, when we see a senior role, a lot of the time what they're saying is that they want somebody who has had a chance to do this practice and can contribute independently and educate on the best practices of UX, because they themselves have had the opportunity to practice and learn about UX in different situations and different scenarios. In my experience, a couple years is generally what they say. Maybe a junior has 1 to 2 years of experience. Sometimes senior is 3 to 5. Sometimes it's 5 to 7. Sometimes it's 7 to 9. As far as I can tell, there doesn't seem to be a consistent decision about what the difference is between junior and senior. But generally what we're looking for is somebody who can join a team, contribute independently, because they have an idea of how to do UX out in the world. And then I mentioned this earlier, but leadership and management. This is also something that I'm personally looking into a lot more these days, and understanding how your role doesn't necessarily impact what your performance is or dictate what your performance is in that role. Leaders can be managers, managers can be leaders, and some people end up doing both of those things without ever getting a role change. All I can say is that sometimes knowing what the role is can help you have a better idea of what is going to be the work that's expected and how performance might be measured. So leaders are creating value, managers are counting value. Leaders are creating circles of influence, managers, by generally having reports, they have circles of power, they've got people that they can deploy for different situations. Leaders are generally leading people, managers are managing work. This is 3 distinctions that Vineet Nayar made in their article on the Harvard Business Review. And it's definitely an area that I'm looking into, trying to understand leadership versus management and what's the interplay between those, especially when you don't have either of those roles in your organization. So to get started, we're going to make a plan. Take stock of where you are today. Conduct a self-assessment. Review what your current skills are and your experiences are across the categories. UX, the domain you work in, teamwork, collaboration, all of those areas we discussed. What are your current skills and what is your experience in those? Where do you excel? Where do you have areas for improvement? How do you think you bring value to your team and organization? What is your perceived value that you bring to the organization? As in, what is your manager, colleagues, what do they think is the importance of your current role and your own skills that you're bringing? And which development activities could you deprioritize based on where you are today? I also want you to think about what you need to develop now. What development activities would make the biggest impact for you for the next 6 to 12 months? What are you currently interested in learning more about or developing? What skills are needed in the current and upcoming projects that you've been assigned to? Where are the biggest challenges in your daily work? I've personally found that when I'm really frustrated about something, I need to get curious and understand why I'm frustrated about that thing. And often it is because it is an area that I see room for improvement, and I need to really think about that. So where are your biggest challenges and what are you having a hard time doing? And is that an area for development? How is your performance measured? And has there been any issues that you've been made aware of by either your boss or your colleagues? These can also be totally valid areas for improvement. And then I would also say, what matters most to your direct supervisor and their boss? Managing to make those people happy will definitely give you more breathing room when you're looking to develop your own personal goals. I also want you to think about what you want to do in the next 5 years. We could also expand this out to 10 years, 20 years, but a lot could change in that time. So I would say, what do you want in the next 5 years? What are the development goals you're looking to achieve in the longer term, looking out past maybe what you're currently doing in your assigned projects? So what kind of work would you want to do more of or less of? How do you want your work to be different? What motivates you about the future goals you have for yourself? Why are you making those changes? What kind of role fits the above criteria? Do you know the kinds of roles that are available to you that you should be pursuing? What kind of skills are going to be necessary for you to succeed in the roles that you're pursuing? And do you think you're still going to be wanting to do UX? Or do you see yourself moving into something different? Are there other skills outside of your current discipline that you should be incorporating into your ideas? And if any of those questions come to you and you're like, I actually don't know the answer to these are also areas where you can consider looking for learning and development opportunities. When you're making your plan, I recommend that you document your goals in the short and long term, and that you try to make those goals SMART. SMART is, let's see, my slide's blocked here a little bit. Specific, that's what the S is. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. This is going to help you identify goals that have attributes that are easier to track and make sure that you're making consistent progress towards them. Now, you don't have to make SMART goals to start your plan. Getting started and thinking in this way is the key. And over time, you can build your goals and strategies in ways that are SMART, but getting started, first thing. So just start getting some ideas down on paper so that you have something that you can refer back to in the future. So what are the strategies to now acting on these plan that you've made? I think it can be really, really important to set aside time for regular reflection. This can be on a weekly or monthly basis, just setting aside 30 minutes to write down all the stuff that you've done in the last week or month that's contributing to the goals that you want to achieve. This document that you keep for yourself can be really, really valuable for manager one-on-ones, performance reviews, and reviewing your yearly key performance objectives. When you've got a list of what you've been doing over time, making consistent progress towards, this can be really, really valuable to be able to show and have proof of this to the people that care about making sure that you're developing in your job. I also would recommend that you work to build some systems and make sure you document artifacts from all the things that you're doing to contribute to your professional development. So this could look like bookmarking articles that you're reading, tracking development activities, organizing all of your deliverables and UX artifacts into an easy findable system that you can then have those quickly available at your fingertips anytime that you're working with somebody who's interested in what you're working on. So while it might be a little bit more work upfront, Future you is going to be thankful that it's easy for you to find all of the work that you're doing, because you'll find that you've created a ton of content, a ton of deliverables, especially if you make learning a regular part of your practice. I think it can be really important to incorporate learning into your work estimates. It is okay at your job to say, I don't know, but I can find out. There are going to be situations in your job where you need to go learn something before you can complete the task. That is okay. In fact, I encourage it. Building learning opportunities into your work estimates will help you build time for research and exploration, grow those skills, share your findings with other people, and help them understand how UX improves the process of all of the things they're working on. And sharing resources is a great way to be able to continue building a professional development practice and getting more people involved in the UX process. It also helps you explain what goes into your work. So I'm sure anybody here on the call has tried to give an estimate for a different thing. Let's imagine it's a research project and you say, it's going to take this many hours, and you watch your product team's eyes bulge out of their head and they say, we don't have time for that. And to them, they're looking at you and thinking, it's a 1 hour interview. Why would it take 6 hours of work? So helping your team understand and breaking down the work that truly goes into your practice can be a really valuable way for you to help your team understand your work and also show how you're bringing value to the process. So for this interview example, you are spending time understanding what the research goals are, building an interview script, contacting participants, conducting the research interview, transcribing the outcomes of that research, comparing that research back to other findings and other interviews that you've done before, and building insights and analysis on top of it. It's not just conducting the 1 hour interview. And by explaining the time and effort and energy that goes into your work, you will be showing others how you're bringing value to the team. I think it can also be very valuable for you to figure out how you work best and observe and try new ways of working. How do you get into flow? Flow is an idea that Cal Newport recently wrote a book about, but paying attention to the kinds of activities that help you really focus in deeply and get to a place where you're building ideas, building analysis, getting into a state of really consistent, deep work, and understanding how and what kind of activities help you get there can be really valuable to your ability to deliver your best product. As you start to observe how you work best, building systems around those work processes so that you have more opportunities to get into flow in your regular work is going to make your work better. So maybe you are building in processes that you only answer emails at 9 a.m. when you first come to the office and 5 p.m. so that you've got a big chunk of time where nobody's bothering you and you can really focus on your design activities. Coming up with the ways that you work best and instituting policies that help you do your best work is professional development. I think it can also be really valuable to just look around and see who's excelling in the areas that you want to develop. Most of us are working on teams. You might have interactions with people in the wider organization you work for. Observe and investigate how people are showing up and what they're doing to learn those skills. Who do you admire? And as you watch them perform, why do you admire what they're doing? Talk to them. How did they develop that skill? Most people, if you're giving them a compliment, say, hey, I really liked how you did that presentation. I wanted to know how you got to a point where you were able to deliver like that. Most people are willing to talk about that kind of activity, and you can learn a lot from just having regular conversations with people that you admire. And how would your work be different if you learn this skill? I think you also have to make your own opportunities for a lot of self-development activities. You can't rely on serendipity. So once you make your plan, identify the gaps in that plan that are not going to be filled easily by your current development progress. So if there's areas that you want to develop, actively pursue ways to fill in those gaps. So some of those active pursuits might be volunteering for opportunities outside your regular workload, shadowing colleagues, or being part of ongoing initiatives in your organization. This could look like mentoring or helping onboarding fresh outs, new hires, and interns, finding opportunities to contribute to your professional society. And sometimes it's going to be starting something new if it doesn't exist in your company and nobody else wants to do it. Maybe if it's something that's important to you, you can start something new. One example of this could be at one of the companies I worked for, nobody ever showed their work. So I thought it would be really valuable for me to get feedback on some of my work. I'm going to start a design review process. Once a month on Friday mornings, we all present what we've been working on for the last month, and we go around the round table and get feedback on those things. Just because it doesn't exist today doesn't mean it can't exist. You might just have to put in a little effort to make it a reality. I also think you should use your network. If there is development activities that you are looking to pursue and don't currently have access to those opportunities, telling people that you want to have those opportunities in those specific areas makes it way more likely that if they become aware of it, that they're going to approach you and ask you if you want to be part of it. So make sure that you are communicating your development goals and the people around you know what you're looking to do. Also, you can use your network for finding people who will give you honest feedback. Having people to bounce ideas off of and practice and level set with is incredibly valuable. This is often a mutual loop, so being able to practice giving constructive criticism and saying hard things to people you respect is also going to help you build your own professional development. Giving feedback is a learned skill. Not everybody gets good feedback or gives good feedback, so having an opportunity to practice that with people who you trust is incredibly valuable. And having a mix of voices and people from different backgrounds can give you different perspective. It increases the chances that you're going to find somebody who's gone through what you're going through right now and can give you ideas about what they did in that situation. I think it can also be really valuable to remember that different levels, you're still learning things and you can share at that level. So if you're a junior, you might be sharing about the impact to your own team in the current projects. Moving up the ladder towards leads, you might be talking about executing on key objectives across a suite of projects. And once you get to the director level, you might be talking about things across an organization or instituting new policies. But at each of those levels, you have the opportunity to talk about what you're learning and growing, and you don't have to wait till you're at the director level to start being able to talk about your professional development goals. You also have the options to have different ranges of visibility. So how are you talking about it on your team, within the discipline that you're in, within your wider organization, and with your networks? So this is a game called UX Bingo. But basically, the idea here is that there are a lot of different ways to have visibility at the level you're at today and work towards having wider visibility tomorrow. So I won't go through all of these because this has been a long talk so far, but as you can see, you could do things like lunch and learn at the senior level about your plan for UX interviews, but you could also think about turning that talk into an organization talk at your local professional organization. You might just change around the different insights that you have relevant to the audience, but just because you present in one place doesn't mean that that can't be reused and repackaged for a different audience. You also don't have to go it alone. You can buddy up with somebody on your professional development goals. You can use teamwork and talk about the things that you're accomplishing as a wider team. As long as you're talking about your own contributions, these can be really great ways and things to have talks about. And you have to figure out also if you need to lead something or do you just need to participate in it? Do you want the visibility of organizing and running something, or do you just want the community and the feedback of participating in something? Contribute at the level that makes sense for your own goals. It can also be really important to help people follow your work and your progress. So talking about your work and your development activities, presenting on the kinds of things that you're just doing in your day-to-day life. These are going to be important because everyone's busy and nobody's watching. So if you're pursuing specific development things and you want to be relevant to your career progression, make sure you're talking about it to the people who matter. Share your knowledge and best practices that you're leveraging in your day-to-day career. Again, these are things that you're doing in your current work that you can talk about. You don't have to wait till you do something totally different outside of your regular work. What you're doing today matters, and you can share that with different parts of your community, different parts of your organization, different teams that you're collaborating with to show your improvement in skills over time. I would also recommend keeping a positive feedback dossier of all the good feedback that you've gotten over the years from different workshops, different emails, thank you letters for work that you've done. You can also chronicle your achievements and share these out as necessary, especially around performance review time, sharing a short list of all of your achievements that you've done over the past year. It can be really, really beneficial to help your manager remember some of the things that you've been contributing to the team. Share and hype the wins of other people. Positive feedback is incredibly valuable in teams. So celebrating someone else's hard work is also a practice of mentoring, coaching, and collaboration and teamwork. It's going to be a win-win. And share your updates in your networks for other people to like and share. So you control that message, and your connections can contribute to the popularity and circulation of your wins. This last one might be a little controversial, but I think you should hire people you can learn from. As you build your teams and organizations, bring on other people who you're going to learn from, build with, and make a better organization. You shouldn't worry about who's going to end up being the boss one day. There are a lot of people doing UX activities before UX was a buzzword. And there's a lot you can learn from having a diverse team with a lot of people from different walks of life. And I think you should support your colleagues as your organization hierarchy becomes more mature. Over time, as you move from just having a single designer to a team of designers and maybe start to build in a hierarchy, some of your colleagues are going to be asked to take on more responsibility. And while it might not feel great in the moment, if you feel like you've been passed over for an option, make sure that you lick your wounds and turn around and help those people, because as your organization grows, there's going to be more opportunities for everybody. And those folks who are taking on more responsibility are going to need help. And last but not least, make sure you're balancing development with relaxation. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, take your vacation, your mental health days, and guard your personal time. This is just a personal opinion, but people who take breaks and have life outside of work make better employees and colleagues. There will always be time for more development. Make sure that you're taking breaks for yourself and allow the people on your teams to take breaks too. So avoid these distractions and disruptions. Not all feedback is going to be created equal. If something that you're getting feedback on doesn't ring true to you, consider the source of the feedback that's being given. In some situations, there's definitely the chance of feedback bias. Lots of research has been done in this. You can Google the term. But if you're getting feedback on something, it doesn't really feel right, I would first say consider asking for clarification and examples. So let's say in a performance review, you're hearing something that just doesn't feel like it really jives with what you've understood your performance to be over time. Get a little bit curious, ask what's led to that feedback. And if it really doesn't feel right, work with somebody that you trust and understand whether that feedback is coming in a way that is something that you should really consider. Not all extra work is going to be a development opportunity. Over time, people will come to you and say, hey, I've got a great project that you could learn to develop. But is it part of your normal job responsibility? Is it something you want to do? Is it important to a manager or somebody in your reporting line? Who is benefiting from this extra labor? And if it's not something that's really going to contribute to your development objectives, it probably isn't a development opportunity. You can still do it, but just consider it as volunteer work. And don't let people tell you a development opportunity is one for you if it doesn't feel like that is actually accurate. Don't self-reject from opportunities. So if you're interested in something, ask and apply. Don't let your concern or imposter syndrome keep you from trying for the opportunities that you're interested in. And don't rely on external validation. If you've put in the work, take ownership of the skills you've developed. You don't have to wait till your next promotion to start advocating for yourself. Set your own goals and criteria for success outside of the promotion and raises. These are not things that you can control. What you can control is having a growth mindset, pursuing development opportunities, and making sustainable progress over time. And don't wait for conditions to be perfect. Textbook execution is very difficult to manifest in real life. Start documenting a plan of the development you want to do, of the activity you want to do, of the thing you want to try. Set a minimum acceptable threshold for what is needed to get that thing done. Aim to exceed it. Do your best work under the conditions that are there. And when presenting the outcomes and analysis that comes from that work, make sure you include the context and the caveats to stakeholders so that they understand the full concepts, and then iterate and do better next time. In the 12 years that I've been working in UX, there has never been a perfect research study, interview, design review, project. Everything has been iterative, so don't wait for conditions to be perfect before you start going towards those development opportunities. So some resources that are available for us for development. Look into the domain resources that are available to you. Subject matter experts in your own company is one of the best resources that I've found to learn about the work and the domain that you're contributing UX to. Company websites, company developed trainings, domain resources and publications, professional organizations, LinkedIn, news aggregators that are specific to your industry and industry trend reports. All of these are going to help you be better at doing UX work in the industry because you're going to have more context of how that fits into the wider scope of that industry. Most workplaces will have some sponsored training, even if it isn't related to your specific UX discipline. A lot of them are going to have things around mentoring, collaboration, teamwork, management, and leadership. So there are those sorts of resources at most companies. If you have that training available to you and it's part of your development plan, take advantage of it. On your own UX teams or across your UX resources in your company, you can learn a lot from each other. So some of my favorite ways to develop my skills on the job are design and research reviews, being able to shadow or support other UX designers as they're doing their work. So whether that's note-taking for somebody in an interview where I get to see how they conduct an interview, how they've developed an interview, helping a colleague do some workshop facilitation so they've got somebody else on hand. Also, I've learned a lot in those situations. Working with another UX designer on a cross-team or product collaboration effort or feature development. Starting a book, article, podcast, depending on what level of effort your team has and energy. You can come up with a small bite-sized chunk of information that you can all consume and then discuss how it impacts your work. Presentations and outcomes of ongoing work, coffee chats with colleagues to get another opinion, have some mentorship and some coaching opportunities. And then guerrilla usability testing actually has been one of the things that has been very, very useful. So being able to just show something that you're working on to 5 or 6 people in your group. These don't necessarily always have to be end users. Sometimes you don't have access, but seeing somebody actually have to go through your designs and give you feedback in real time of how well that's working can be a really great way to develop your team. So it's surprising, but one of the best resources is Google and YouTube. You can start your development opportunity by typing in topics that you're interested in developing. Some of the other aggregators that I've used over the years are Pluralsight, Degreed, edX, as well as TED. All of these have lots and lots of different presentations, videos, different topics. A lot of the places, if you don't have a standard available training, you can go to Google and you will be given a lot of options. I also really like the industry research that comes out of the Envision group. They do a lot of presentations. They have a lot of industry reports, films, courses. As a company, a lot of it is marketed towards using their tools, but they do a lot of good industry information. Online communities can be a really great way to get feedback outside of your own organization. I really like Jared Spool's Leaders of Awesomeness. It's a free community where UX leaders from around the world share their ideas, and Jared gives a talk every Monday at, I think, 1 or 2 o'clock that is free for anybody to join about a UX topic, and it can be a really great way for you and your team to watch something and then discuss how it impacts your work. If you've only got a few minutes, sometimes just pulling up an aggregator of sites. I really like sidebar.io, which gives you 4 to 5 UI articles each day, or a list apart grabs industry related articles, and just taking 5 minutes over coffee to learn something new can be a great little bright spot in your day. I also listen to a fair amount of podcasts. So there's a couple here that are design related that I've been turned on to recently. 99% Invisible, What is Wrong with UX is really fun and great. And then Design Matters. But I also listen to a lot of interview podcasts. And one of the things that I do in the background while I'm listening is I think about how somebody's being interviewed. And I think about how I might have asked that question differently based on what kind of information the person actually got. And I've learned that there's lots of different ways that people do interviews, and listening to the outcomes of how they ask questions had led me to become a better interviewer over time. There's also lots and lots of books out there that you can read from a lot of different topics. This is just a pull from my Goodreads over the last 1.5 years. Lots of different topics here, and I will give a plug to the Houston Public Library. All of these books are available there. There's also lots of UX and tech news sites that I reference. So Nielsen Norman Group, Interaction Design Foundation, and World Wide Web Consortium are 3 resources that I use a ton in my regular work, especially when I'm trying to teach other people that I'm working with about the basics of UX. And then when I'm looking for industry news, Harvard Business Review, the New York Times, and the Atlantic, as well as Ars Technica, tend to have really consumable, easy to understand articles that are well researched, with lots of kind of references to learn more. Leveraging your professional organizations to connect with other UX professionals. Here's a list of just some of the meetups that I've been participating in over the last couple of years. Here locally in Houston, Hexagon UX is a really great one, as well as our organization here today, HUXPA Houston, as well as we've got Austin just down the road. They have a lot of groups that are also available, and San Diego, downtown Orlando UX, UXPA, DCA, DC, Chicago, and then IXT Atlanta also does a ton of events, and a lot of them are virtual and online. All of these communities also have an active Slack, which can be a really great place to go when you've got questions about different problems that you're having, as well as finding out about new opportunities for courses, different events at different organizations. These Slack communities are a wealth of information. And conferences. So I have not convinced most of my management to send me to too many conferences over the years, but I do hear they exist. So there are industry conferences in your domain. I have gone to OTC, which is the Oil Technology Conference, I believe, here in Houston. That was super fun. We mentioned that UXPA International is going to be in Austin in June. The UXRConf is a remote conference that's free. That's UX Research Conference. That one's happening in June as well. Config, which is the Figma conference, is remote and in San Francisco in June. And there's a link here to all of the other conferences that are happening in HUX. There is a lot of them. A lot of them are still doing virtual tickets for reduced prices. So take a look at what resources might be available to you. So thinking of some closing thoughts here, I want to reference an article from Kes Eritrea. You're not an imposter, you're actually pretty amazing. So in her article in the Harvard Business Review, talking about imposter syndrome and reasons why people don't pursue professional development, she recommends that you should make a plan. A better way to manage your anxious feelings is to get organized. Break down your goals into smaller, more manageable chunks and plan to tackle them one at a time. Completing a vast number of tasks can feel overwhelming, but consistency will get you far. She also recommends to keep a positive mindset. Many of us tend to downplay our achievements. In an attempt to be humble, we brush them off by saying our success was just a product of luck or of good timing. While humility is admirable, too much of it can hurt rather than help you, especially if you're already fostering feelings of self-doubt. And she recommends celebrating your wins. We often get so focused on the outcomes of our work that we forget to take a pause and honor ourselves. We worry that it is a waste of time or that it will be seen as showing off. But celebrating yourself is a simple and fun way to combat imposter syndrome. I'd like to thank everybody for joining the call today. And I hope that this has helped you think about how you're doing your professional development and some potential opportunities for different ways of approaching professional development in the future. I would like to ask everybody to help us build a wider list of professional development resources by putting your favorites in the chat. And we'll potentially go through some of them here now if we've got some time, but I see Zachary popping back in to say hi. No? Okay. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm gonna take this offline. We're gonna open up the chat and see if we've got any questions or if anybody's wanted to share any of the resources that you are personally using to help in your professional development journey. Sharing those resources now will help the rest of us have access and create better communities. So please throw those in the chat now.
Yeah, we can take questions now. Either you can type them out in the chat or you can unmute and ask them out loud.
I wanted to ask a question. I was particularly impressed by your bingo idea. I thought that was a really cool way to kind of get started going in the development program. How does that work? How does the game work?
Oh, so the bingo, I was just saying it looked like a bingo board, but the reality of the situation is that whether you're junior, senior, lead, and director, or you're talking about contributing at your individual team, your wider organization, your discipline, or your community, the chances are that a lot of us are actually probably doing ones that are at the senior level, some of them at the director level, some of them at the junior level, and that you shouldn't necessarily limit yourself based on your current level to contribute in these different areas. But I've never actually used it to play bingo. Those were just some ideas. But it's a good idea. Maybe that'll be one of our development activities in a future drink up.
Well, I belong to a team. I'm a UX consultant, and I've been trying to plan a conversation about training in conferences. And I thought that when you said that, it really inspired, because we have a lot of introverts who don't like to participate, especially our younger ones. It just inspired a really good idea to try to get everybody to get involved with that bingo idea. So
take it and run with it. All right. So any questions in the chat?
There was a question about being able to share the other 2023 conferences URL. Are we going to make this slide deck available to share throughout the majority of the group?
Yeah, if there's interest, I certainly can. I can also just post that link here in the chat. I believe it is a link from usabilityhub.com, but I will share it now.
Hey, Melanie, it's Michelle Sue. Great
Michelle.
talk. I was wondering, how often are you updating your plan, reviewing it, creating new ones, tracking? Right now, my professional development and goals center around just my company's policies. So we have some goals tied to KPIs, and our team encourages professional development. So I just review mine twice a year, but I'm wondering if you do more than that.
So I would say that I probably organically do it in a way that is more like, take a look at what I've been tracking and see if there's any themes. So if I've been doing a fair amount of interest, if I see that I've been like looking into a lot of articles about leading from behind, coaching up, doing that kind of thing, I might kind of think in my mind, okay, this is something that I've now read 2 or 3 articles about. Maybe there's something here that's piquing my interest, keeping me coming back for more. Maybe I should think about it as something that I'm learning about and start talking about it to more people. So I would say I'm probably doing it on a quarterly basis, just because that's how my organization thinks about check-ins with your manager. So I'm thinking about it on a quarterly basis. But what I'm doing a lot of the time is kind of looking at what I'm interested in, because I'm tracking over time and seeing if there's sections that I might want to dig into deeper.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Let's see, any more questions? Some good resources over here. Talk about Adam Grant.
Hello, I had a question. How do you typically handle, or what would be a good advice in terms of like tight deadlines and you happen to work on multiple projects? Are there like any advice that you would recommend in situations like that?
So I think everybody here's probably been in that situation where somebody's come to us last minute and said, I need something done. I have an idea and I want it. Can you do it by next Tuesday? And there are going to be situations where you're going to say, yep, boss, I'm on it. I got it. But for the most part, as I've moved and grown in my career, what I like to do is first get curious about why that person's asking for something so quickly. What I find a lot of the time is that when somebody's asking for something, especially on a short deadline, they don't understand how much work they're asking me to do in that deadline. Usually they're thinking what they're asking for is pretty small.
Yeah.
And when I interpret what they've just asked for, I'm like, dude, that's like 3 weeks of work. What are you talking about next Tuesday? So my first line of defense generally is to get curious with that person and ask, okay, so we've got lots of work going on in different directions. When you asked me that you want that thing done, what exactly were you expecting? And then explain that what I kind of took away from it initially was, this is what goes into that work, and help them understand in detail, these are the different things that I would normally do to accomplish that. And this is why it would be really hard for me to do my way by the deadline that you've given. I've also found that helping other people understand, especially if you're on multiple teams, what are the other priorities that you've got going on? A lot of the time you might be working on multiple teams, but they're also aware of different projects and where their project falls in that hierarchy. So if you talk about with them, I've already got something coming up Monday, I can do my best for you when that thing is done on Monday and trying to get some work done for Tuesday. But the reality of the situation is that I've basically work with your manager and understand what are the priorities and just do your best. But I think helping people understand when they're asking for stuff, where the disconnect might be between what they're asking for and what you think you need to do can be one way to help limit the load that people might be asking for. Does anybody else on the call have any tactics or ideas that they've used in the past?
I will say that that was a really insightful, and that definitely makes a lot of sense. And I have to work on being more communicative on that on my end, and kind of let them know, the workload that I have. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, we see Michelle saying that's a good book. I believe we're talking about the Carol Dweck one, The Fixed Mindset, Too Many Realms, and I've Made the Shift. Awesome. Pamela is saying that if you like that one, you'll love Think Again from Adam Grant. Good resource. Interactive motion is my storyboarding. Yeah, Rodney's going to start working on getting better at interactive motion. Very cool. Second Brain is a great PKM, personal knowledge management strategy. I recommend the book Thiago Forte, Build a Second Brain, from Rodney. External Brain and Evernote. Yes, Notion's also a really good option. I would also say sometimes, especially in the environment we are in, where we've got people moving between different jobs at a rate that maybe they would choose to be different. Keeping a list of your own professional development outside of your work computer can also be very important, just so that you don't lose track of that document over time. Obviously, don't put any sensitive information into it if it's going to be in your personal account, but yes, think about where you're keeping that information so that you keep that information because it's your personal development.
I finally made my brag book, and I will say I would recommend building it as you go, because I'm definitely missing context on some of the compliments that I've received in Slack or emails.
Ooh, that's a good one too, pulling them up from Slack or email. All right, I prefer Notion. Obsidian is another free resource. Very cool. Bingo idea, bingo. Giving
Like
talks
bingo.
internally. Oh, sorry, Liz, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, who doesn't love bingo? So it's a good icebreaker, yeah.
So giving talks internally and then externally, but locally can be a good way to refine a talk so that it's ready for a national conference. Yes, having chances to practice. Everybody's busy and nobody's watching, sad face. Ooh, public library, you get access to the LinkedIn Learning Catalog. Pro tip, and Houston Public Library cards are free. So if you're in the Houston area, go to your local library and sign up. Offshore Technology Conference. Thank you, Ron. That's what OTC stand for. The not clickable. Oh, okay. Accompanying Managers Tools podcast for managers is a good resource that somebody's calling out here, Ron. Yep. Would love to have access to those links. We can share things out. All right. Well, it looks like we're starting to lose some people here. I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's come out today. I will export this chat and try to come up with a list and share it back out to the meetup group.
Yep, we can also post, in addition to putting this presentation up on LinkedIn, we can also post the slides if folks are interested on the meetup page too. Or we can circulate them to the folks who attended. So thank you so much for the awesome presentation, Melanie. It was wonderful to listen to. I think we all got some great tips and folks, I hope that we will see you all at the next UXPA event here. So I hope everybody has a good night.
Nice. Thanks all, and congrats on a great event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, guys.
See you at the next HUXPA event.
Take care. Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.